Good morning. We are going to call the workshop of the Board of Regents of the Del Mar College District to order at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, December 14th. We'll call roll to establish our quorum. Dr. Adami is not here yet, but we are expecting him. Regent Averett? Here. Regent Bennett?
Here.
Regent Garza? Here. Regent Hutchison? Here. Regent Kelly?
Here.
Dr. Turner will be joining us this afternoon, and Dr. Villarreal will not be here today. We're going to send our condolences to her on the passing of her mother, and so she will not be joining us today. So we do have a quorum and can conduct business. Would you all please join me in a moment of silence? Thank you. Mr. Kelly, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yes, please join me in pledging allegiance to our flag and country.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And if you would all join me in reading the Del Mar College Vision Statement. Del Mar College will be the premier choice for life-changing educational opportunities provided by responsive, innovative faculty and staff who empower students to improve local and global communities. Del Mar College is streaming live audio and video from our Board of Regents meetings on the college's website in real time, with exception of portions of the meeting considered as closed session by statute. We have the opportunity now at the start of our workshop session for any general public comments. Seeing none, we will move on to our first item of business. Please note that Dr. Adami has joined us. Good morning, sir. Our first order of business is going to be to have a discussion and possible action related to our redistricting process. Mr. Rivera.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Regents. Your first item this morning for your workshop, as we've discussed before and planned for, is going to be for you to receive the initial assessment of the results of the evaluation that our redistricting counsel, Mr. David Mendes, with the Bickerstaff firm out of Austin, has done for you. You've got the PowerPoint, you had it before, hopefully you had a chance to look at it, but Mr. Mendes is here to walk you through it and to give you details about what they have found and what you should do next. Of course, this is something that you do every 10 years following the national census, and you've got to look at your districts to see whether they're out of balance and then what to do accordingly. Just a little background, Mr. Mendes is familiar to the college. He's represented us before, and he in fact helped the college through the 2010 redistricting process, and is known throughout the state, travels, he can tell you, all points on the compass, helping local governmental authorities with this very same process. So we're happy to have him here today. The Bickerstaff firm we've also used for other matters, and they serve as our outside counsel. So with that as a general introduction, I'm going to turn it over to our subject matter expert, Mr. Mendes, and ask that you welcome him. David? Thank you.
Welcome, sir. Thank you very much. I think you probably, in 10 years prior, have only met Dr. Adami and Regent Hutchison. The rest of us will be not new to this process. Some of us have been on other boards going through this process. But welcome, sir, and thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. My pleasure to be here with you all. I'm kind of taking a deep breath because this redistricting cycle has been very different for folks. It won't be, thank God for you guys, it won't be nearly as fast-paced or chaotic as it has been for counties, and certainly as difficult as it's been for other entities. But I'm going to do 3 or 4 things today in walking you through the process, the data, and the obligations that we have as a college district, and then kind of give you some perspective, I guess, here at the beginning. The data came out late this cycle, and I know if you were involved as a school district or at other entities in the past or the city, you know that in most decades, the data comes out in about March or February, March, April. of the redistricting year, of the '01 year, and then political subdivisions leisurely examine their data and take their process through. This cycle, because of COVID and a number of other circumstances, the data didn't come out till the middle of August. And the deadlines for the counties and cities that have May elections didn't change. So the data is very complicated. So it came out in the middle of August. It was not ready to be deployed to and allow us to work with political subdivisions till the middle of September. And we have, for the last 3 months, been racing literally around the state trying to get these processes done for other folks. You guys are spared that because of the timing of your elections in next year. And so I had asked Augie to give us a little time to present this to you also. We could get the other 70 or 80 entities that we've gotten through the process through this week done, so that we can then do yours at a normal, a more normal pace. So I stopped on the side of I-37 last night for 2 hours to sit through a couple of board meetings as clients were busily adopting. Everybody wants to get it done before the holidays. And so that's been the hard part. But with that in mind, your process is more leisurely. You have November elections, as I understand it, in next year. So the candidate filing period that we're dealing with begins in middle of July. And so over the course of the next 6 months, we can kind of get you through the process. And so what I'm going to do today is walk you through the obligation. I know some of you guys from sitting on other boards, certainly you sir from sitting through this before, understand the obligation already, but for the members of the public and for the record, we want to establish why we're doing this. And then I'm going to lay out the basic legal principles that apply to it. And then we haven't established a timeline, but I want to visit with you all today about what you're thinking in terms of going through a public input process for that. And we'll talk about that briefly here this morning to the extent you want to take time for this at this point, or let the staff work it out. And then, we have some, at the back end, if you're ready, we have some guidelines and criteria that are being circulated to, and these establish the rules for how we're going to go through the process. The criteria, I'll explain, chronicle that we adhere to the legal principles, and the guidelines for public participation establish a transparency between the public participation with you all in giving you input on what the district should look like. And those are the two things you're probably going to act on today if you're ready. If not, they could be done at a future meeting. It's your call on that. So what I want to do, first of all, is explain why we're here. There are constitutional principles of one person, one vote. There are Voting Rights Act implications that continue to apply, even though some parts of the act have changed over time. And I want to start with the fact that you're the legislature for the district. You are, like our congresspeople or legislators, the folks who make the laws for the college district. And so because the district was divided into single-member districts at some time in the past, then you are under the one person, one vote principle. And so that dictates that each of the single-member districts must have roughly equal population. It doesn't have to be like in Congress where you have to have exactly the same number of persons in each of the 36 congressional districts, but we have to just be within a 10% deviation. And what I'm going to tell you is that you analyze this every decade when the data comes out, and the data for this decade is very interesting for your community, because while the district didn't grow in population by much, less than, about 5% from last decade to this decade, the imbalance among the districts is amazing. And so it's a very substantial one. And so that's why we're doing this, is because of your one person, one vote obligation. And so I kind of, how you figure that 10% is important. It's not sort of intuitive. And so I have a simple example. If we had a district that was divided into 4 trustee districts or regent districts, and they were, and you had a 40,000 population, the ideal district size, of course, would be 10,000 persons in each of those districts. In this example here, the census shows that the first district, A, has 11,000 people, so it's 10% overpopulated. And district number D only has 8,000 people. And so it is 20% underpopulated. The way the courts would examine that 10% deviation, this district is 30% out of balance. The 10% over on District A and the 20% on District D are added together, the numbers are added together, and that means we're 30% out of balance. And so you have to kind of add population from the other districts into D and shuffle certainly some population from A into B to kind of get them closer into line in this example. But that's how you, when I talk about that you're out of balance, this is what I did with your districts. So the data that I used to do that is the PL 94-171 file distributed by the Census Bureau to Congress and to the President for the allocation of people for Congress. And that's got total population, it's got voting age population, those persons that are 18 years of age or older. It's taken on April 1 of last year, and then it's got race and ethnicity. And so that's what we use, the total population to figure out your 10%, but then we use this voting age population to measure strength, because some of your districts have more minority population. They're the majority minority districts, and under the Voting Rights Act, as I'll explain in a few minutes, you're required to maintain that strength, and so we use the voting age for that purpose. I'm going to tell you one thing, because a bunch of my clients are struggling with the population figures. They don't think they're right, because as you know, the census was being taken during the COVID, and there were suggestions that they were going to add citizenship questions, which might have chilled people's willingness to respond to the census and all that. And so many of my clients are looking to challenge these numbers for other purposes, because I know colleges, schools, and others depend on their funding throughout the decade on their census numbers. What is my population? And depending on that, then the staff and y'all can apply for grants and other things. And if the numbers are wrong, well, you may not be getting your fair share of federal dollars or other monies because of the way they're allocated. That kind of challenge is possible. Many entities are doing it. It won't affect redistricting. Sorry, it won't affect redistricting. We have to use this data to get through this process, but I'm just wanting to point that out, because I mean, you may have had people complain to you, well, they didn't count us right or whatever. So with that in mind, again, I've explained how we use these two figures, so I've kind of gotten ahead of myself on that slide. But I want to talk now about the voting rights aspects. Since November 1 of 1972, Texas had been subject to the Voting Rights Act and for Section 5, and we were subject to Section 5 for many years. Of course, from 1965 forward, Section 2 applied to us. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act says that we can't discriminate against any person in our districts on the basis of race or language minority. And that generally means that we're talking about packing or cracking. So just as a general definitional thing, when we're looking at your district, and if you have too much population, and if you have a concentration of a minority group that's protected, then you have to make sure you don't crack it or divide that community in a way that's going to limit or dilute their ability to elect. The same thing is as if we're creating the district balance, we want to make sure we don't concentrate all the minorities into one or two districts so that they are not able to elect a proportionate share. They don't have a proportionate voice on the council. In a community as diverse as Corpus Christi and the area around Nueces County, it's hard to end up packing or cracking. But I just need to go through that for you all and for the public so that including in this process of redistricting to just narrowly tailoring it so that we're just dealing with the question of, did we take care of these folks in this district? And that's the only purpose we can use race for. So if my lawyers and I will undertake this process with you, my lawyers will be explaining to you, well, this district is appropriately sized from a racial standpoint, and they're doing it from this legal obligation you have, and that's the only reason we're talking about it. We're not trying to use it for any other discriminatory purpose. So what we're trying to avoid is what happened in this example from Houston, from Harris County from about 2 decades ago. The map on the upper left was a congressional map developed by our legislature in an attempt to give African Americans and Hispanics in the green and blue districts there the ability to elect candidates of their choice. And in that case, I think the red district was a predominantly African American district. The green district was predominantly a Hispanic district that was being designed. And as you can see, that top district was just bizarre shaped, but it got to some numbers that allowed for each of those two groups to have a majority in those districts. The court, that was challenged in Bush v. Vera, and the court found that unlawful. That's gerrymandering. That's a poster child for gerrymandering, at least in our state. And so it invalidated that, and the court had it redrawn, and it redrew it in the shape on the bottom right, which accomplished the same basic principle, but in a much more compact and uniform way, and in which voters could more easily figure out what district they were in. And so this is what we're trying to avoid with the rules that I'm going to talk to you about now, because the courts have articulated a set of principles that allow us to draw without creating bizarre maps like that one. So race can't be the predominant factor, but it's okay for us to look at it to make sure we don't violate Section 2, and we're going to narrowly tailor the approach. And we were doing it back last cycle when I was here with you guys, or when you were at the other entities redistricting. If you'll recall, when you finished the process, when we finished redistricting, we would then send the plan that we had approved to the Department of Justice in Washington for pre-clearance. That was done under what was then Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. And the Department of Justice would look at the process we'd been through and the numbers and figure out if we had not violated the minority group's voting rights. And in 2013, in Shelby County versus Holder, the Supreme Court invalidated the application of Section 5 to Texas and other states like us. And basically, what had been happening, I'm going to give you the long version of it just so you have some history on it, but when the Voting Rights Act was passed, there was a history of discrimination in the South and many other states against minority groups. And so the Congress put a bunch of our states under the supervision of DOJ, and you couldn't change a voting precinct or a polling place without getting permission from Washington. And for a decade, from November 1 of 1972 up until this decision in 2013, we had to go send everything to Washington, including the last redistricting plans you guys were involved in. Well, and they applied, the DOJ applied different standards than we're going to be applying under Section 2. They applied this retrogression standard. They not only wanted to make sure you didn't discriminate, they also wanted to make sure you hadn't backslid. So each decade as you drew something would be your benchmark, and you couldn't go backwards from that point. That law, that standard doesn't apply anymore when Shelby County went out, and so you have more flexibility in how you do things, but we're still, the courts still look at the same basic principles of anti-discrimination. So it's just that we're our own policemen now. You, as a board, are the guys who have to make sure we follow the law and as we apply it, or we can get sued under Section 2. So the benchmark, as I said, is the standard against retrogression. It's going to be measured, and the benchmark is those 2020 numbers that I just talked about. And the criteria that are in the resolution that Augie and I are going to present later here is, are these principles that I'm going to go over briefly with you. And if you'll indulge me, we want to use easily identifiable boundaries between the districts so that your voters kind of know, well, I'm in this neighborhood and my trustee or regent is so-and-so. Or I'm in this school and I know we're in Regents X's district or whatever. So easily identifiable boundaries to the extent possible. We're trying to maintain communities of interest. So we're trying to minimally impact the districts you have, because you're elected by a coalition of citizens in your districts, and that is politically proper and legal, and so we want to try to maintain those political strengths for everybody. We want to use whole voting precincts to the extent possible so that everybody in a voting precinct votes for the same regent, if at all possible. Sometimes because of population imbalance, the numbers are so small in a district, the difference that you need to get it balanced may require us to split something, or maybe your identifiable boundaries aren't as good, so that's what we do. Yeah, Augie's got the resolution, so he's going to pass it out, and it goes over these in a legalistic way, but I'm just kind of laying them out for you. So we're working from the same basic districts that you have. That's going to be the approach we'll take. We want to minimally impact them. We want to adopt districts of relatively equal size based on the census. We're going to be drawing districts that are compact and contiguous and avoiding the crazy mapping that we saw there as an example in the gerrymandering example I gave you. We want to keep everybody in your district, so we're not going to pair any incumbents so that you don't have to have a political campaign against each other or anything like that. And we're going to narrowly tailor the plan to comply with the Voting Rights Act on any protected minority groups. That's basically what the document that Augie just passed around is those principles. If we were to be challenged, you redrew under these principles, the courts would find that as evidence that you are compliant with the current standards on how this law is applied. Then the approach we're going to take, before I get into the numbers for y'all, is I'm going to give you this initial assessment today. I'm proposing these guidelines and criteria. He'll pass around the guidelines in a little bit. We'll talk about them briefly because they allow for public participation in a series of hearings for written comment and for plans from the public. We will analyze those comments for you. My team will come forward with you and analyze the data with you, and then you'll draw at the dais here interactively using equipment very much like this. We can literally draw on the fly here in public with you. Now, if you'll remember in past decades, you probably sat down with an expert GIS person and their lawyer as you all were drawing districts. I may have met with individual regents here to find out what your interests were. Well, this decade, the law of open meetings has evolved in such a way, and in particular, it says that if a trustee meets with a third person, like myself or my lawyers or a drawer or any individual, and the trustee knows that that individual is meeting with other members of the board constituting a quorum to build a map, that might be a violation or a deliberation within the meaning of the Open Meetings Act. So what we're doing to avoid that kind of perception to you all, because we typically would only talk about your district when we were with you, but to avoid any perception, what we're using this time around is we send a questionnaire to each of you guys, ask you, hey, your district is overpopulated by X amount of folks. Can you, following the criteria that you just adopted, can you tell us what kinds of changes you envision to bring yourself into balance? And I can provide data to you, and you can tell me in one direction, tell my team in one direction what you're interested in, and then we come here. We've collected that. You all haven't talked to them individually, and we haven't drawn a map. We bring that data here to a public session, and we incorporate it into a map that we can all discuss at the dais. It's done in public. We avoid any perception of impropriety in that regard. So then, once you get to a map you like, you adopt it. It'll have to be implemented prior to the July filing date for the filing period in July, so that people can sign up for the November elections. So we're presenting this here today. We have typically been scheduling a couple of drawing sessions and public hearings. This is the curtailed schedule that I was doing with counties and school districts and cities for the last 2 months or 3 months. And literally, the schedule might be full from the time I presented the initial assessment to the time they adopted. It could be as short as 30 to 60 days, just because of where they were in their timing, when they could do it. You guys have 6 months to do it, so we can take time between now. Let's just say we give you that survey. You take it with you over the holidays. You come back from winter break and turn it back into Augie, and Augie presents it to us, and then we can start drawing before spring break. Have a drawing session or two. Come back. You can look at some maps. We'll post them up at the website for the college district over spring break, and then we come back and maybe do another drawing session or public hearing to get input from the public. And before the spring term is out, you have had, a substantial amount of very deliberate process for accomplishing. And you could fit it in with the rest of your schedule, or you can do it on an independent schedule from your normal meeting schedule. But this is an outline, and believe me, this is the first one I do, the first initial assessment I present, where I'm not rushing around saying, we got to be done next month, so it's kind of.
Let's discuss this piece for just a minute with the board. I think we had talked about a potential May adoption.
Right.
If we could push that to a May adoption as opposed to June, that gives folks a little bit more time. And then we'll let staff kind of work out the drawing sessions and the public hearing based on our regular meeting
Right.
schedule. Because of the board members' obligations, I think if we can do public hearings and any workshop sessions in our regular meeting schedule between February and May, that would be
Regent Scott, yeah,
preferable.
we're trying to coordinate with Mr. Mendez's office to see
Good.
if we can get those dates lined up
Yep.
at the same time.
But is that consistent with what you all recall? So everybody's good?
Doesn't give us that many months,
Right,
so that's good.
right.
I think that be done, and we can accommodate pretty much any schedule now.
Right.
Earlier, we had to negotiate. Sorry, I'm not. But that's where that's the process part. And so, with that in mind, I'd like to get into your data. A long-winded approach to get to here, but let me just say that the district grew, but by a small amount. I think it was around 5%. I presented you with a detailed report, some 30-something pages long, that has all of this data. What I'm going to do is just go over a few high points of that to visit with you all. And as has happened every decade here, and I was born and raised a few just west of here, and so throughout my life I've been coming here to Corpus, and the growth dynamic has been the same over the last 65 years or so. It seems like to me. But so 5 and 4 grew, no surprise. 1, 2, and 3 are going to be underpopulated, and the imbalance, as you can see, is substantial. It adds up to almost 50% when you take the top and bottom elements of the chart. And districts 1, 2, and 3 are each, 11 to 15% underpopulated. We're going to have to add population. If your ideal population size is 64,379, you can see that in each of those districts that we need to add some pop. The eastern district off the island and Bay System, and the one just on the south, District 5, will again have to contract, get smaller as you give up territory to the other districts up above. And most of these districts are majority Hispanic, so they're not going to change. When you transfer the territory around, it's not going to change that much in terms of the overall strength of protected minority groups. So I don't anticipate any major problems there. I provided you with voting age analysis on these, and you can see that still at a voting age level, the Hispanic, we're a demographic that is very much younger. Have more people under the age of 18 or children, and so that's why that drops off some on that first column of percentages. But it's still majority Hispanic. One of the things that the team will be able to show you as they're going through the redistricting with you is we can also show registered voter and Spanish surname registered voter data as you're drawing on a district, and you'll see some drop off between these percentages. And SRV, or Spanish surname registered voter, is it's the Secretary of State's protocol for. They analyze names. If they see a Mendez or a Rivera or something like that on a last name, they will tag it as a Spanish surname. And it's important because the courts use that for voting rights analysis to say, well, is there enough of a registered voter base within a district to elect? And so as you're going through doing the math of the different districts and you draw them, you can keep track, and the staff can show you how many registered voters are a minority in a district if you're worried if you're getting too close to the edge of a majority-minority district's voting strength. Before I move off, I provided a bunch of other maps and charts to you guys, and if they've circulated a copy of this PowerPoint ahead of time to you guys, you'll see a bunch of other slides. I'm not going to burden you with them. Some of them do things like this, like they have the voting precincts, and some of them have other data. But I have some thematics in there that show where the minority populations centers are based on concentration from the census blocks in the city. That's for your to get a better feel for it. But I didn't want to belabor the presentation here with that material, but I'll be glad to answer questions about that. I also gave you individual pictures of your district that may or may not be easy to study there, to examine as you're going through it. And I'll tell you, I just finished Dallas College and Alamo College districts. They just finalized their plans. In fact, tonight, I guess Alamo will finish their process. Dallas finished last Tuesday. But they asked me for some big maps, like 3-foot by 4-foot maps that showed street level detail. And then for each of these voting precincts, they asked me for the demographics of each voting precinct, so that if you're looking around, you're saying, well, I need to add a precinct, you can look at the precinct and see what its demographics are or other characteristics, and you can say, well, that might fit in with what I need to get my population up or not. So we're open to assist you with that kind of data any way you want, and Augie has my number. He'll share it with you all. Actually, he'll share my team's number, because I'm coming and doing this presentation for you, and then I'm going into sort of retirement or of counsel role with the firm. I'll continue to counsel with them and be with them, but the active work on this will be done by the head of our education group, Kabi Caputo. He's serves with Kabi on the Texas Community College Board of Attorneys, and he's been doing this not as long as I have. He's a much younger man. But he and the team will guide you through the redistricting process. He's done many redistrictings himself. He just couldn't be here today, and so Augie asked me to do this for y'all. But it's my pleasure to have presented this. I'm glad to answer questions about it or discuss any things in particular you're looking for in your process. I know many of you have experience with this.
Do we have questions for Mr. Mendez? So I do have a question for Mr. Rivera. The draft order, the resolution that you've given us, do you want us to adopt that today? Okay.
And he's also circulating some guidelines for public participation. If you'd allow me, I'll just briefly, as he's circulating that, basically, these are rules for the public to participate with y'all, and they provide a structured way for us to do this. If you'll recall, Regent, when we did this last time, we had a similar set of policies, and basically, it requires any comments to be proposed to be done in writing. So we're not squabbling about what the numbers were that somebody told us they wanted to see in a district or whatever. That we're asking that any comments be in writing so we won't be misunderstood or they won't be misunderstood. If somebody wants to provide us with a plan, they've got to use the same basic numbers, the same basic math or principles that we use at the board, so you can compare apples to apples. Any plan that redistricts the college district or proposes to do it should cover all of the regent districts and not just one, because it's real easy to draw one district that meets your needs, but you're going to probably mess up how it's possible to fix the other regent districts. So any plan must be a complete plan of all of the regent districts within the college. The plan should conform to the criteria, and so they should explain how they conform to the various criteria in your policy. They should also be submitted, any other comments should be in writing again. Persons providing the comments must identify themselves by name and some a home address so that we can kind of talk to them, because a lot of times we need to get more information from them. And then they must be submitted to the Board of Trustees by the close of, this says the public hearing. In our processes, we've had one public hearing at the back end of the process once, let's say we're drawing in work sessions and we draw through a couple of work sessions. We then hold a public hearing at the back end so the public can tell us, well, we like the plan, we don't like it, whatever. And so it's one hearing. If you want to have multiple hearings, we can adjust that. But we want to make sure you get the comments by that hearing, because we hold a hearing well ahead of any time you're going to adopt, so that if you get a criticism or comment from somebody, we can address it for you. We don't want to be there at the adoption meeting and somebody says, well, wait a minute, what about X? And then you're scrambling around trying to figure out how to address that before you adopt that night. So we want to have an orderly process. That's what that second order does, and they can make the process much simpler for you all.
So just for clarification, someone could submit a comment anytime, but the deadline would be at the close of that public hearing.
Of the final public
Okay.
hearing.
Okay. And we could set up our work sessions such that if there is an opportunity for public comment at each of those work sessions as well, or the first work session in addition to the public hearing at the second work session. Okay? Okay.
Correct.
I do want to have some questions about the initial order. Mr. Rivera, are you going to walk through that initial resolution with us? Since we just got it on our desk today, I want to make sure we've had a chance to review it.
As Mr. Mendez covered in his presentation, these are criteria that they've developed in accordance with legal principles. And
Yeah, they correspond, Chair, to this slide that I have up on the wall that we talked about. Those elements are exactly what is incorporated into this formal document.
I do have a question, Mr. Rivera, about number 3, where you talk about where this is not possible or practical, districts should be drawn considering county election precincts. You don't mean the Nueces County Commissioner precincts, you mean voting precincts. Because I could read that because our Commissioners Court districts are called precincts. So maybe, yeah, okay. I just want to make that clarification. It's county with a low, yeah, okay. I read it,
Little c. and
little
then-
c, but I read it as commissioner precincts, and there's 4 of those versus 5 city election precincts, it's, districts, so just want to make sure my terminology was correct. Are there any questions on either of those resolutions? Any general feedback?
And the guidelines, Regent Scott, fit right along with what you always like to encourage, and that's setting up a process, right? That way there's clarity, everybody knows, these will be posted on the website of the college, and it'll be very clear to everyone how, that they're entitled to participate, but how we're gonna ask them to participate, for the reasons that Mr. Mendez outlined, and you gotta have an orderly process as well, so.
So we'll adopt, we'll have a motion to consider both of these resolutions today, and then you will report back to us, I guess, between now and February in writing on the proposed schedule. Would we need to adopt that schedule publicly, or just if the board has any concerns, they could get back to you when you communicate that to us?
Exactly, I don't think it
Okay.
requires a formal, yeah, we'll get back to you and work through that. And it's
Okay.
gonna be subject to change, so,
Right.
we ask for your patience as we get through this. You never know what's gonna come up, but we can come up with a schedule for you.
Well, let's do these in order then. We will first consider the order adopting criteria for use in the 2021 redistricting process. This resolution has been presented to us in draft form. Is there a motion to adopt it as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. A second by Mr. Garza. Is there any discussion on that motion? Is there any public comment on that motion? Seeing not, all those in favor of adopting the criteria for use in the 2021 redistricting process, please raise your hand. Any opposed, same sign. That motion passes unanimously. Next, we will consider the guidelines, the resolution for guidelines for persons submitting specific redistricting proposals and providing comments. That's been submitted in draft form. Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Averett. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Hutchison. Any questions or comments on the motion to adopt? Any public comment on that motion? If not, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed, same sign. That motion is adopted unanimously as well. Thank you, Mr. Mendez, for being here this morning. I would say we look forward to working with you, but maybe from afar. We know Mr. Caputo, and we'll be happy to work with him, but it won't replace the expert.
I was going to say, just, Regents, I want to thank Mr. Mendez personally for coming here. As you can tell, he's been doing a lot of traveling, a lot of windshield time in the past few months, and I'm very happy that he's gotten you teed off. I hope you're comfortable with where you're at. I think it's going to be a smooth process, and look forward to working with Mr. Caputo to get it done. So, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mendez.
Thank you. We will now move on to the second item in our workshop agenda, discussion and action related to our strategic planning, discussion related to our strategic planning and enrollment. This is the continuation of our workshops around our strategic planning document. Dr. Escamilla, do you have some introductory comments?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. Thank you, and good morning, everybody. As we're getting ready, as the team is preparing at the dais, I'd like to, podium rather, I'd like to talk a little bit about this item. Part of it is again, a section of our strategic plan that is fundamental to our core operations here at the college as we begin to expand into and take deep dives into the outcomes of our plan. Those are the guiding principles for which all of our operations are anchored to, okay? And I want you all to know that these data, although they are as heavily anchored as they are, as we are to them, that we understand that every year is different. Certainly, under the circumstances that we're under right now, things have changed at the college, and these plans are on paper only. They're not carved in stone. That being said, we look forward to robust discussion and input from you all, and how we can adjust these plans in the near future. The other part of it is inextricable from our strategic plan, and that is our enrollment management processes. Today's presentation is mostly about demonstrating to you all, our board / our community, what our processes are as it relates to enrollment management. Now, the enrollment management process and procedures, I'll call it a game, the enrollment management game has changed tremendously in the past couple of decades. Certainly from when I was in enrollment services and enrollment management back when, things have changed dramatically, largely through technology, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But that being said, both Dr. Christina Ramirez-Wilson and Patricia, Vice President Patricia Benavides-Dominguez are going to come up and talk to this, and they'll be in tandem. They are talking both about the same processes here at the college and how they are tied together. Both of these are leaping off points because we do understand that as we've come into this past year and a half has demonstrated that we must be flexible, and we must be flexible is really it, and ready to pivot. That's what we're about to do, Regents and everyone listening in. We're about to pivot and make some significant changes in the history of our college. That being said, Dr. Christina Wilson.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Regents. We'll get started with the Strategic Planning and Enrollment Management Workshop. Our strategic plan, entitled Aspire, Engage, Achieve, was officially adopted in September. With 6 overarching goals. Each goal has established KPIs and objectives. The college also has developed an operational plan, which includes KPI thresholds, targets, and institutional strategies put into place to support the attainment of the plan's goals and objectives. During this workshop, we'll be focusing on Goal 2 of the strategic plan, recruitment and persistence. The college strives to recruit and attract students to Del Mar College and provide resources to support continuous enrollment until students achieve their educational goals. That was a goal that was established in 2019, and it remains our goal still. However, so much has changed in the last 2 years. The college has developed its first iteration of its strategic enrollment management plan. It was developed over the course of the past year using stakeholder input as the basis of the plan's priorities. A copy of the plan was included in your board packet today. The SEM plan was created to align with the strategic plan, but it specifically focuses on the areas of recruitment and persistence. The plan does not contain all strategies that the college has in place to address enrollment management. Instead, it focuses on new strategies in which the college will implement to impact these aspects of student success in light of the global pandemic and its impact on students. In the same way that the plan was developed, as Dr. Escamilla mentioned, today's workshop will be presented as a partnership between the areas of student services and enrollment management, planning and institutional effectiveness, and instruction. The Strategic Enrollment Management Plan is based on the Guided Pathways Framework. Many of you have learned about this framework as part of the work you've done with the state and in nationwide trainings. The model illustrated on the screen was developed by the Texas Success Center. Since 2017, Del Mar College has participated in statewide Pathways Institutes to learn more about best practices in implementing guided pathways. The framework looks at the student experience from the time they first connect or on board with the college until they meet their goals of earning a credential and either entering the workforce and/or furthering their education. The SEM plan focuses on the first 3 stages of the Pathways framework: connection, entry, and progress. The entire framework within SEM will focus on these 3 stages. For each of these 3 pathway stages included in the SEM plan, we will review key performance indicators, both the original indicators included in the strategic plan and new indicators. We will also be discussing a sample of strategies included in the SEM plan. Now, for those of you who have participated in many strategic plan KPI workshops, the next few slides will not be news to you, but I think it is helpful to get us started with discussing what our KPIs are and how they've been established. Goal 2 of the strategic plan originally had 4 KPIs. Today we will review the most recent data for these KPIs, along with additional metrics that we have identified to help us understand the student experience. For each KPI, we will review our most recent data, what you may call a data snapshot. Each KPI has an identified threshold and target. Thresholds are the college's acceptable levels of achievement, which you may call our minimum targets or baselines. Thresholds that are not met indicate that additional activities and/or resources are needed to address this aspect of student success. Targets are the college's aspirational objectives for improvement, what you may call our stretch goals. The Strategic Planning Committee established the thresholds and targets by reviewing data trends for at least 5 years. When reviewing the data snapshots, you'll see that the thresholds and targets are color-coded. Green, meaning the threshold or target was met, and red, meaning that the threshold or target was not met. The purpose of monitoring our KPIs in the way that we do is improvement. We must always seek to improve and ensure that we are meeting the ever-evolving needs of our students and our communities. We may not always meet our thresholds. We may not always meet our targets, but what's important is that we are looking at how our students are doing and discussing as a college how we can do better. Today we will discuss where we are now, what our most current data show, and whether we are meeting our thresholds. We will discuss how we compare, both to ourselves over time and to our community college peers. We will also discuss where we want to be, our targets, the direction that we wish to go. And I always like to talk about this before we get started. Our large colleges comparison peer group. For each KPI, we will compare ourselves to this peer group. It's important that we understand who makes up this group. The Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board groups colleges based on their credit enrollment. The fall 2019 enrollment for our peer group ranged from 8,000 students at Navarro College to 19,000 students at Blinn College. Blinn is always the outlier in our peer group. It's important to recognize that while comparing ourselves to our peer group is very valuable, there are many differences between our colleges that are unaccounted for in enrollment-based grouping. There's no college out there that's just like Del Mar College. However, knowing where we stand in comparison to our peers can provide us with some excellent context. Okay. The first pathway stage, Connect, corresponds to Goal 1 of the SEM plan. The stage begins when a student first expresses their initial interest in attending Del Mar College and ends when they initially enroll. I will now turn the presentation over to Interim Vice President Patricia Benavides Dominguez, who will lead us through the Connect stage.
Thank you, Christina. Hello, good morning, everyone. Madam Chair, Board of Regents, Dr. Escamilla. The next few slides, we will explain the Strategic Enrollment Management Plan, which begins with connection and recruitment. It's important to note that the strategic plan is a living document, so is the SEM plan. This slide sets up the discussion for KPIs 1 through 3, student headcount, contact hours, and students receiving Pell. SEM Plan Goal 1 objective is to increase access through new and improved partnerships and programs. KPI 1, student headcount. The student headcount for fall 21 was 10,395. Our threshold we've set is 11,000, and our target is 12,500. Do we have any questions? KPI 1 student headcount. This graph represents the annual enrollment trend from 2017 to 2021. Overall, the community college enrollment has been trending down. As you can see, Del Mar is at 6.95%. KPI 1 student headcount continued. The student headcount for KPI 1 for fall 22 and fall 24, we have set the following thresholds. For fall 22, 10,500 with our target 11,000, and for fall 2024, 11,000 with our target 11,500. Student on-ramps and pipeline. It's one of my favorite slides right here, the next few. This slide is a snapshot of our fall 21 students entering Del Mar by student type at the beginning. This information is taken from Apply Texas Common Application, and they define the nomenclature. The largest student type is by high school graduate. Please note that the high school graduate does not necessarily mean they are a recent high school graduate. This is what the student indicated on the Apply Texas application. The top 4 student types are reflected at the top, and this is our priority for recruitment and outreach. Student classification. This slide is the data taken from Fall 21 CBM Report 001. This is the student classification and the percentage of students by type at Del Mar. Student types are defined by the co-board based on the number of college hours. Note that 68% are considered freshmen, and many of our students are part-time. This data point does include dual credit. So you can see 68% of the students for fall were considered freshmen, and so on. Student intent. This data slide is taken also from the CBM 001 report. The slide defines the student intent as per their Apply Texas application. At the time when a student applies, the Common App provides the following choices. For fall 21, for example, 5,980 students indicated that their intent was to pursue an associate's degree. Keep in mind that intent changes in their educational journey. So they might have said, I'm here to be a transfer student, and then along the way, I'm going to get a degree. So intent changes as they, fall in love with their major. high school matriculation. Annually, we examine what high schools bring us the most enrollment upon high school graduation. The left represents the top application producing high schools in the Coastal Bend. The right represents the top high schools in the Coastal Bend that matriculated from applicant to enrolled. For fall 21, the majority of the recent high school graduates that are enrolled come from these high schools. This is non-dual credit, first-time applicants only. So I think it's very interesting.
No prior college credit hours.
No, ma'am.
Interesting. Okay.
And this will tie back to another slide, the next slide that we're going to talk about. High school graduates. You recently asked, where do they go, right? So this slide is taken from our IR dashboard. The slide explains where recent 2019-2020 high school students in Nueces County attended post-secondary upon high school graduation. The left represents the high school graduation number. For example, CCISD had 2,617 graduating seniors. Flower Bluff had 414. Of the seniors that graduated from the high schools that reside in Nueces County, to the right you can see the detail of where they are. Del Mar has 608 high school graduates that came from Nueces County schools. 312 attended A&M-CC. And you can see other colleges represented. The data from the left is one academic year, and the data on the right identifies where students are in the subsequent fall semester.
Can we talk about that 2,400
Sure,
that are not found?
yeah, I'm glad you asked. On the 2,400 that are not found, and also I think we had 160 that were not trackable. The non-trackable graduates have a non-standard ID number that we can't find a match in the Texas higher education institutions. And the not found graduates have a standard ID number that were not found in the specified fall term at Texas higher education institutions. So this is a data point that we do share with our ISD partners. I think that there's a vested interest with Del Mar, A&M-CC, A&M Kingsville, and the ISDs represented there to do a better job of when they submit this information to educational entities that we pull from, so that we can, one, have better tracking, and two, if they really are nowhere, having a very detailed conversation about how do we provide more access, how do we provide more information, how do we get these students. So we have been having very engaging conversations with our ISD partners, and giving them not just this detail, but other details about the current students that are with us.
And is it spring graduates, May 21 or June 21 high school graduates, and fall 21 enrollment? Is that what this?
This is this is May 20 graduates.
20, okay, and
Right.
fall 20, okay. Do we have trend? Is this a consistent trend in Nueces County, or?
Yes, when you pull up the IR dashboard, you can go back up to like 10 years, and you can see, you can manipulate the IR dashboard and look at all the schools that we serve, and then you can go by county, so you can pull it up any number of ways, but yes, it's pretty consistent.
So it's not a COVID anomaly, is that?
Yeah,
Correct.
Correct.
If I may add something, this goes back to the data point that we've carried with us for years. It's been consistent, that says that approximately 35% of all Nueces County high high school students who leave high school, one way or another, whether it's graduating or not, everything in between, 35% do nothing for 5 years, are not tracked into any form of employment, education, service, or anything else. 45% is the comparable stat in San Pat County. 45% of those individuals who leave high school do nothing for 5 years. That's I don't have that number. I speculate, and I strongly suspect that a preponderance of those numbers of that 2,400 fall into that category there. But there's still other data that says that what's surprising and what's discouraging and an opportunity are those students that are not tracked. We've got to work with the school districts to find out how we can get our arms around them and bring them in.
So not tracked is a very small number. If we want to fish where there's a big pond of fish, we ought to go for the not found. And I realize that not all of them are ready to enter post-secondary. I think there's a couple structural things. The FAFSA being required now for high school graduates, it is going to create an awareness for students that, okay, maybe college is affordable. So I think that, but I think we also need to be very specific. Yes, work with our ISD partners, but the onus is on us to go out and recruit and figure out how we can bring those students into a pipeline, get them started with some sort of degree or credential while they're still in that mode. Can we get 100% of them? Probably, no. But can we get 10% of them? Can we get 30% of them? Can we set some targets for that number who aren't matriculating on their own, who need that extra encouragement and pull into post-secondary education?
A couple of weeks ago, I was at Veterans High School. We were having this discussion.
It goes off when you don't talk.
A couple of weeks ago, I was at Veterans High School with some of our instructional staff here and also with our dual credit staff, and we were talking about some of this data, and they were really shocked. And and of the students that are in CCISD that we are working with, they were, we gave them a bunch of data, their performance, how they perform with us, who they are, and then of course, all ISDs want to know what their other peers are in the Nueces County are doing, right? So we always like to foster a little competition. But still, wanting to help the student, letting them, here's the options. The options are for everyone, right? So.
Well, I guess my mindset is a little bit more than wanting to help the students. It would be an intrusive,
So I
a very aggressive recruitment campaign.
I have some specific examples. The curriculum is our greatest instrument to do this, and that has been a process, a project, an approach that we've been taking through it's a hybrid of dual credit and continuing education instruction that has just opened up tremendously in the past, 3 years, Patricia? Mm-hmm. It's only been 3 years that we've been, and we've been innovators on this because a lot of schools or colleges are not doing this in conjunction with their high schools. Some are, but we're an exception, I think, in this area based on what I've heard. That is, we've been going into the high schools in a dual credit format where those students, and going after those, and offering continuing education workforce programs, okay? Pushing those programs into the high schools and getting it and drilling down as deeply as we can. What's happening there is we're offering those students that are not TSI eligible yet, hopefully they will be. In other words, they're not qualified yet to take college course credit for the transfer and the like. But in offering these significant and high-value credentialed programs at earlier and earlier ages, we're opening up things that didn't exist heretofore to the high schools. Certainly not at the levels that we're offering. That right there is a primary an instrument to make. And we're we're getting these students active and involved, not saying that they're going to go off and permanently, find their future, but they're doing something and they're gaining skills and a foothold in some capacity. Patricia, you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. It's definitely a mutual goal between the ISD and higher ed. I have also pushed in that detail of that, when I go to a high school campus, students know if they're college ready or not, right? And so sometimes students are like, Del Mar's not for me, but Del Mar is for them. And so this is where we push the continuing ed. We push, here are options, right? Give me access so that I can. I didn't previously have access till now because of COVID, right? Because COVID shut us all down from attending. So now that we are actively engaging, these are the conversations that we're having. The high flyers they're gonna be successful without us. They're gonna go somewhere, right? But there's a good chunk of students that we don't see or feel like college isn't for them. And that's the narrative that we are discussing and making some concrete plans to give me access. We brought faculty there. Here's what we have to offer all students. So
We've been offering them for some
Right.
time now, and that's what's made a big difference in our last, from a analysis standpoint, in our last base year, we were able to measure some of the biggest numbers in that area. So it's a growing area, and again, it's those students that are being offered credentials, opportunities for a transcriptable credentials, and an effort that they didn't have just a few short years ago.
Other questions, comments from Regents? Mr. Bennett and then Ms. Hutchison.
The 2,450 that have not been found, we know that by high school, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that concentrated in certain high schools more than it is others?
I don't have that detail in front of me when we go on there, but it does have the detail about high school and that, of course, the bigger high schools can have probably not found, I'm sorry. And it varies from high school to high school, yes.
So do we tailor our approach to each high school based on the percentage?
No, we tailor what we come to an agreement on. Like, here's what we have to offer. What can you do? What would your students like? Because students have to have an interest. I don't want to. Part of the other issue with high schools is that I don't want to recruit high school students and say, oh, I want this person in automotive, and you haven't even asked them. We have encountered that before. I want students to have an awareness and have an interest in what we have to offer. And so part of it is what I call evangelizing. We're selling higher ed. We're selling invest in yourself, and here are your choices. So I'm real big on advising, taking that interest inventory, talking with the student. What is of all the things that we've told you, all the things that we've shown you, what is your most interest? That also ties into the career and tech days that transpire at every high school. And our staff goes there and talks about their programs today, as well as other professionals that are there during career and tech career day at high schools. So it's a combination of a lot of things. And of course, dual credit working with CE and other programs that we have to offer.
Can you go back? I think you talked about this, but I need to be clear about the difference between not found, not trackable, and doing nothing.
Okay, so the subsequent slide, here's the numeric values of the previous slide. And so the not found is ISDs send this information, send their student information, and every student has a numeric ID number. And so whatever number they're submitting, the higher ed clearinghouse, and probably it's probably a combination of clearinghouse and TEA cannot find this number, right?
Okay,
Because this is where we pull from.
Let me sort of ask it this way. If you're not found, that means that person is not enrolled in higher education.
Perhaps not. We don't
Okay,
know.
we
It's-
don't know that. That's
We don't
that's
know.
what I want to get clear.
We don't know.
It is a speculation from my standpoint to tie the doing nothing to the not found and the no ID, only because we've been doing it for a long time. And these sets of data, or this set of data is coming, is a newer set. The 35% that is an older set of data that the school districts and the colleges have done for a long time. But experiences just showed that there's an overlap there. There's always been an overlap between those not found and then those doing nothing. So I don't mean to muddy the waters any more than necessary, but the doing nothing data that I brought up, 35% in Nueces County, has been a longstanding data point that I injected here, so I apologize. I didn't mean to confuse.
That's okay. I think I'm getting there. So not found doesn't necessarily mean they're not enrolled, but probably means that? Is that, okay?
Yes, yes.
I have a volunteer back here.
Dr. Wilson?
Oh, so
And let's turn the mic back on. There we go.
It means they were not found to be enrolled in Texas. The majority of our students do stay within Texas, but it's possible that some of those students went out of state. A lot of the students that are not trackable may not have social security numbers or standard issue ID numbers to be not found. That's the not trackable. I apologize if I'm messing up my wording. But not found means that these are students that graduated from high school and were not found to be enrolled in any higher education institution the subsequent fall in which they graduated in
And that's
Texas.
another, I think, distinction, that's the subsequent fall. So somebody who took
Correct.
off a year would be, yeah, to me, that's a different category than somebody that never goes back. Yeah, okay.
Plus, you're also going to have some students that join the military, so.
So military work, higher education, I thought all three of those were trackable now via the ID.
I'm not sure on the military. Christina, do you know?
in my data set, then the 35%, it is included. It's not no education, no employment, and no military in the 35%. Again, I know I don't mean to confuse things.
No, and I guess I'm
It's
not
important.
looking for an accounting down to the number, but again, if there's big buckets of these folks that we think are potentially recruits for us, what high schools are they coming from? What are the big bucket high schools that they're coming from? And how do we provide some resources to help those students enter the pipeline? And this is looking at our long-term goals, but from a community standpoint, it's also looking at 60 by 30. It's looking at all of those things, and how do we pull those students into post-secondary education of some kind? And so, again, if it's a resource issue, what do we need to do to look at those resources? If it's a priority or focus issue, can we make some statements as a board to encourage you to prioritize that? But we think it impacts everything that we want to do, is getting students in the pipeline. And if there's that many students that are not found, then that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. The more we can, the younger and younger ages that we can touch, we believe the 8th grade has been our goal for a long time, and we've gone that far down and come back up because of the urgency of this group up here, the old and the high schools. But getting to the 8th grade level,
It's a yes and. I don't disagree with that at all, but if every year there's over 2,000 students graduating from Nueces County who aren't going anywhere, there are a bunch of fish in that pond that we need to be going after. And so I don't disagree with that, but there's also low-hanging fruit, fish, whatever analogy you want to use.
That's the urgency.
Right, there's a sense of urgency there, not waiting out. Yes, start when they're in 8th grade. Yes, what are we doing in their senior year to recruit them? Yes, Mr. Kelly.
All right, and I'm with Regent Hutchinson. I'm trying to wrap my head around not found 2450. Am I understanding that these are individuals who we can't find their social security number? Or what, there's some type of tracking failure? Okay, or whatever number, what number are they using that we're trying to track them with?
That's an ISD issued number. That's an
And-
ISD issued number.
Okay, so we're talking about their student number from the school district that they attended.
Yes, and then once they leave, they look at Social Security as well. So the 2,400 were not found in higher ed, but they are trackable.
Or, okay, so we know their number's right, but they're not in the military, they're not employed, they're not in higher ed.
They are not in higher ed. This doesn't include military or employment.
Okay, I wasn't clear about that. So Mark, this does not include military.
That does not, yes.
So some of the 2450 could be serving.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Clear as mud. I guess
Okay.
our point is, yeah, we're really into that recruitment discussion. Yes, Ms. Aver?
And sorry to prolong this, but back to Regent Bennett's point too, and I appreciate the efforts that we're making with the high schools and certainly with the middle schools as well. Is there a strategy in place though to spend more time at those ISDs who have a larger percentage of that 2450?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Moving on. First time in college students. This slide is the data taken from CBM 001 regarding FTICs at Del Mar for the years fall 2016 to current. We are trending down in FTICs. We know, like from the previous slide, there's like over 2,000 students not trackable. We are going to go after those students, have been going after those students, and hopefully, our goal is to increase those FTICs. And the pandemic has definitely impacted the FTICs. KPI 1, student headcount. To view the full picture of student enrollment, we must also review the enrollment in continuing education programs. Thresholds and targets have been set for continuing education programs, corporate services, Texas Workforce Commission programs, and transportation training. KPI 2, student contact hours. In addition to looking at our headcount, it's important to be familiar with our contact hours. Contact hours reflect the amount of time that a student spends in instructional activities as part of their enrolled coursework. This chart provides a historical perspective on contact hours. This chart illustrates a steady increase in contact hours for the last 5 years for both fall and spring. The impact of COVID is evident in fall 2020. As you can see, in fall 21, contact hours are trending up. The one-year change went up 2.1%. Continuing on, KPI 2, student contact hours. This slide provides contact hour data from 2014 to 2020-21. As you can see, credit hours are down, but continuing ed hours are trending up. The CE data is preliminary as quarter 4 is not certified. Here are the 5-year enrollment details for continuing education programs. It's important to note that the rate has changed over the last 5-year period. KPI 2, student contact hours. This is a new KPI, target, and threshold. We'll be monitoring our student contact hours, and we have a target to increase 3% annually. At this time, I'm going to be introducing our interim Associate Vice President, Cheryl Sanders, and she will continue on with the program.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Regents, Dr. Escamilla. KPI 3, students receiving Pell Grants. This is an important indicator to track as we want our students to apply for federal financial aid and maximize the funding that they're eligible for. In 2020, we exceeded our threshold, and we have established a goal to increase recipients by 3% each year. Here's our 5-year trend line. We have had an overall increase over the last 5 years, and we have set an ambitious target for ourselves in 2024. We anticipate that these numbers will continue to increase due to several strategies that we have in place. The Financial Aid Office has an outreach specialist that travels to all the high schools in our service area. Additionally, House Bill 3 requires high school seniors to complete the FAFSA. This began in the 2021-22 school year. This table describes the percentage of the total student headcount that received Pell, the fall semesters indicated. At 32.8%, the rate at which Del Mar College students are receiving Pell Grants is comparable to our large college peers and the overall state average. This bar graph shows the total FAFSAs received annually and the number awarded and enrolled. The total applicants received does not indicate enrollment, and awarded indicates awarded and enrolled.
And what is the geographic area for that previous slide?
This slide? Mm-hmm. This is just the total number of FAFSAs that we've received from anywhere.
That
here
Del
at the
Mar
college.
College receives?
Yes.
And so when the student fills out that application, they pick how many colleges to go,
Yes.
for it to go to?
They'll check, you know, we can check 1, 2, 3, as many as they want, and so we receive them if they've checked Del Mar College.
Okay. And we then go after them like crazy?
We are, actually we are. We do outreach efforts to all the students that we receive ICERs on, and we're going to continue to do that.
When we receive an ICER does it, we do an analysis on the ICERs that we receive versus if they did an Apply Texas, and if they didn't do an Apply Texas, we do an outreach effort to them. So we do monitor that monthly, and we get that information from the Financial Aid Office. Additionally, that you seen on the dark blue bar graph, the 15,000 to 14,000 of the financial aid FAFSAs received. Students do keep Del Mar on there, so sometimes they could be going already at another institution, but leave Del Mar on there. So as long as they leave Del Mar on there.
And what do you mean by outreach? That means send them an email, send them a letter?
We do text, we do call, and whatever information that we pull from that ICER, we will do text, phone call, email.
Okay, any more questions?
Yes, I have one. Back to the students receiving Pell Grants fall semester.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the percentages there. That's the percentage of the total student population that receives the Pell Grants?
They receive a financial aid award of some kind. It could be Pell, and it could be other aid. Yes.
So we've got about 26% of our students that are dual credit. They're not eligible for that, are they?
They're not in this mix.
So they're not in this computation?
No, dual credit students are not allowed to receive financial aid.
So 32% of what receives the financial aid?
The 18 and plus population are eligible to receive financial aid based on
Okay,
their
so it's the 100% minus the 26%. Okay. That's what I wanted. Thank you.
I will now turn the presentation over to Lorette Williams, Executive Director of Communications and Marketing.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. As you can see by the demographics, there's a variety there that's highlighted that we need to reach with our enrollment and registration messaging. So first, I'd like to provide just a general overview of the different platforms that we use to execute a full and robust marketing campaign. Each semester, our general registration and enrollment campaigns are featured on television. That includes local, cable, and our streaming platforms. We're on radio. That includes all of the local stations, the iHeartMedia network, and streaming platforms such as Pandora. We additionally utilize outdoor billboards, both in print and digital, internet marketing, which encompasses search engine marketing and targeted digital ads. So search engine marketing is where we target certain words that people may search, like community college or careers or Del Mar College or workforce training. You get the idea there. And when a user searches these topics, our ads automatically appear. And you're probably very familiar with this when you're searching to buy a particular item, and then all of a sudden your feed is full of ads for mattresses or sofas or whatever it is that you're searching for. Of course, we also utilize our social media channels such as Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, as well as direct mail pieces and ads that are featured in printed publications. Some of our newer marketing tactics that we implemented throughout the pandemic include ads on podcasts. We also did some wallscapes, door clings, and we even did a kiosk at La Palmera Mall, and we had targeted workforce ads on LinkedIn. So I'd like to share with you some data that we collected from our fall 2021 marketing campaign. This particular campaign featured former students from different programs, and they were writing a Dear Del Mar letter. The campaign was heavily saturated through television, radio, social, and digital ads. And we specifically created a unique web address that would help to track our marketing activity. So the campaign URL for the fall 2021 was delmar.edu/achieve. And so from here, we could tie the landing page views directly back to our marketing efforts. So the data that you see here represents over 45,000 views to that campaign landing page, with over 40,000 of those being unique users, and they're all originating from some sort of ad. Now that landing page contained information once they got there, enrollment information, registration dates, tuition payment deadlines, and links to information on how to register or contact an advisor for assistance. It also had information on dual credit and continuing education courses, in addition, of course, to general course type information. So it's very clear here that you can see by the large numbers that we have several people interested in learning more about Del Mar College and what we have to offer. So we now need to peel back the layers further to help us find out if there's any barriers of personal, financial, all those sorts of things that may have kept them from completing the actual registration process. Additional fall 2021 marketing data trends show that we did increase the number of our new visitors to the college's website by just over 5%. This tells us that students are actively reaching out for more information. The average household saw a DMC television ad an average of 4 times per week during that registration cycle. We also saw that 95% of our streaming audio commercials were listened to completion. So people didn't just bug out of them, and that is a really highly effective strategy for us. All in all, more than 2.8 million impressions were delivered via our broadcast, podcast, and our streaming platforms. And of course, this doesn't take into account our social media efforts, billboards, or printed publications. Speaking of printed publications, one of the things that we've been doing for years and years is sending postcards. And we kind of just do this big, wide swath, over 131,000 of these postcards go out. So one of the tactics that we are going to do this next round is we're going to be including a unique QR code, and that will actually track if the user visited our site via that postcard. And that's going to help us with regards to that, to see how many people are actually looking at the postcards and then utilizing that. So that's important when we're allocating our resources as well. Any questions? All right.
I have one, and I may not have the term correct. Geofencing, where you map out around the high school and the kid logs onto Facebook. Are you doing any of that?
Correct, yes. Our agency does utilize the geofencing for certain targeted ads, specifically on things like TikTok, areas that we know that these students are visiting. That's also another area that we really haven't been heavily involved in per se for Del Mar. We haven't had our TikTok account very active, and so that's one of the areas we're going to be focusing on for this next year, is really building up that account, because we know that's a real good group of students, that age range that we need to be targeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I might add, I had a conversation with Sheriff Scott just yesterday about our ads, and I asked if she'd seen this type of ads, and she had to think about it for a little bit, and maybe once, and I said, that's kind of a good sign, because of the geofencing means that it's targeting the audience. I'm like, sorry, Chairwoman Scott, you're not our audience for, maybe you are, but not ideally in the ideal scenario of going after those younger ones. Using that geofencing really keeps us out of the loop, and unless you're part of that demographic that they're targeting, you don't see those types of ads. There are other layers of ads that us more seasoned individuals see, and they're more of the traditional types of approaches that we've been using. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, on this slide, we've listed some of our strategies and activities for SEM Plan Goal 1 connection recruitment. For example, increasing DMC employees as recruitment ambassadors. We find that providing consistent training to employees is very helpful in messaging, making sure that employees know where to guide students if they have any issues navigating college processes. For example, applying for graduation, changing a major, etc. Do you have any questions on any of these strategies?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if, you talk about recruiting staff members or using ambassadors. Would there anything to keep Regents from being able to work as ambassadors or work in some of the high schools or some of the, in order to be able, and I certainly would be willing to be trained so that we have the same message. But I just think that there's opportunities to be able to go to some of the communities that we're more familiar with, and particularly, we work for the entire district, but sure. I represent District 1, so there's a couple of high schools there where I think that they probably have really high numbers in terms of students that are, or not found, or potential college students that we, sure. that are not in the fold. And we talked about, I'm kind of getting back to some of the things that Patricia said about looking or trying to dig for areas of interest in order to be able to kindle an interest in them to possibly go into, participate in higher education. But I'm thinking too, do we have surveys, or would we have something that we could, people that are doing this recruitment or efforts or enrollment efforts, increasing enrollment efforts, be able to also find out what are some of the things that are keeping students or potential students from coming to Del Mar College, in terms of, we do have Pell Grants, and I see some of the information in the Pell Grants was just up to 2019. And so I'm kind of wondering what's happening in 2020 and 2021. And I know that maybe 21 is a little too soon to be able to have those numbers, but certainly 2020 could have been in those numbers.
We have a variety of outreach that we do. We have been surveying our ISD partners, our community partners, and definitely any interest we have from any Board of Regents wanting to help us with our outreach efforts. We do have an annual calendar, and that does get updated and changes quite a bit, especially since we're doing a variety of things, whether it's in person, online Facebook Lives. We have had previous Board of Regents help us during registration. We haven't had any, that I recall, any regents coming out with us to pound the pavement, but we'll take you any day.
That's okay. Been, so I think to answer that part, your role naturally is to be an ambassador for the college, and including the high schools if you get invited to a PTA meeting and those kinds of things. And I would, careful what you ask for, kind of thing, because you can get really, really tied up into some micro. And I'll tell you, you want to hear the pulse. I would think as a regent, you want to get the pulse of the high schools in your area and maybe tie in. We can help you tie into the PTA level, booster club level, that kind of thing. And then that way you're staying, and you've got your ear to the track to what's going on holistic, or at the macro level at the high school. You start, and then yes, you can get access to the students and that kind of thing. But I'm telling you, from experience, even me, I've learned back off, let the staff take it, let the staff direct all those kinds of things. Even though I used to be a recruiter, you can get into the micro real fast, and you get drawn down, and they're going to ask you 100 questions you're not ready for. So from both ends of those, I think in your areas, your respective districts and so forth, my opinion is, if you want to tie into those with the principals and the superintendents of those kinds of things, we'll be glad to help you do that and let you know when those opportunities are out there. But then again, when you're in the grocery line in your district and so forth, you're going to get more of those conversations on average throughout the year than a single event here or there. We're not trying to keep you out of anything. We're just saying be careful what you ask for. But
my interest specifically is in the students.
Sure.
I mean, we deal with people at higher levels. We talk to principals. We talk to superintendents. You talk to board members of the school districts. But to me, I want to know what the students are thinking. Because I'm thinking that there's some students, regardless of the number of ads, and I think we have a great ad campaign. I've seen some of the advertisements. I just think that there's some students, particularly at the lower economic levels, that have tuned out messages from colleges because they just feel that first off, they think they're not qualified because they're not the brightest. They're average students, so they're not the brightest and not the high flyers, as you mentioned, or their parents have specifically already told them they're cute and they're encouraging them all they want when they're little in the elementary levels, but when they get to middle school and high school, by that time they're already saying, well, we're not going to have the money to be able to support your higher education aspirations or your ambitions, and so they've got to be getting the message that there is a huge percentage of our students that are receiving Pell Grants and are getting scholarships and there's other ways to be able to reach higher education levels. And I just think that those conversations need to be had and they need to be encouraged.
They are happening. They are happening.
We're very, yes, they are happening, and we're very hopeful with House Bill 3, with the mandatory of the FAFSA. So I'm looking forward to that data point next year, what comes out of that, because it's in the interest of all the educational opportunities here in the Coastal Bend.
But Regent Garza, the Miller High School, your alma mater, has a rich alumni history and activities, and they still stay in touch, and they've got a different, longer-lasting opportunities for those kinds of things. So, off the top of my head, if they could tie you into a keynote kind of thing, invite you as do a keynote opportunity to meet and greet and those kinds of things. And if we can back you up with a team, because you'll need a team to go into that for all the particulars that'll be asked that night. I mean, something like that we can arrange, and you might be able to tell us better what the Alumni Association is doing to reach students, even in your own. It doesn't have to be your alma mater, but that's your sweet spot, and we understand that. We can make things like that. We can facilitate things like that. I don't know if we can make them happen. It'd be up to the school, the high schools, but we would be glad to do that. So that you can hear. I hear what you're saying. You want to hear from those students. You want to give them an opportunity to talk about your story. You've got a brilliant story and a background to share and self-disclose that would go a long way with those students. And just know that our team is absolutely, they are doing things at the micro level, trying to reach students from all points. Wherever they are, academically speaking.
I'm not trying to be critical in terms of the efforts that we're making, because I've seen the outreach in the public sector, basically in I'm going to say public gatherings, whether they be mixers and whether it be trade shows or whatever. I've seen all those type of outreach efforts. I'm just thinking that there might be some things we could do at either the assembly level or the classroom level that we're not currently doing, and it's not just about taking a message, but also getting information and data, or maybe even surveys from them that says, what are the challenges that are keeping you, average students, from not looking at?
They're not coming to the trade shows, they're not coming to the recruitment shows, and that's what your point is, and I see that. And how do we get into that most local level? You know, the auto shop class at Miller that my dad used to recruit interns from and do work study, and we have a dozen or so over the years that I still know to this day that we got from Miller High School. And so those are the ones that are not going to go to these shows and not going to go to Tech Row, the recruitment events and those kinds of things. They're going to hang out. You've got to get to them. And I hear what you're saying. So it's noted, and I think there's some great possibilities. We just need to coordinate with the schools.
Okay, thank you.
I hope what you all take from this level, and I know we've gotten tactical, but if we can raise back up to the strategic and to the resource level, I hope what you've taken from this discussion is our deep interest in that recruitment effort and in the pipeline of our students, and to have the resource and budget and allocation priority conversation, because this impacts everything that we do. Sure. And so seeing what COVID has done to us across the state for community colleges, but also what it's done within our service area, for us to do some things differently and to utilize, if you need ambassadors, if you need alumni ambassadors, student ambassadors, regent ambassadors, if you need those kinds of resources, then let's bring those to the table. And so I'm hoping that you're all hearing that how much of a priority this is for the Board of Regents.
Absolutely, and we appreciate that.
Duly noted.
And what I was going to just briefly add is I don't think any of us want to get in your business. We are very supportive of the efforts that you've been making. And I think I would just offer to use us as you see fit. You know, if there's a place where we can fit in, where we can accompany you somewhere and play a very teeny tiny role or whatever, I think we'd all be happy to do that.
You will definitely be hearing from us, don't worry.
Yep.
Okay, if there are no other questions, I am going to now turn the presentation back over to Dr. Wilson.
Thank you. Great discussion this morning. The next stage of the pathway, enter, corresponds to Goal 2 of the SEM plan. The stage begins when a student initially enrolls in the college and ends when they begin completing their first college-level courses. Another term that we use to identify this stage is onboarding. As part of the discussion of this stage, we will review 3 key performance indicators. We will also review a sample of strategies from Goal 2 of the SEM plan. The objective of Goal 2 is to simplify onboarding processes, including enrollment, advising, and registration processes. KPI 1 of this section is new. It looks at first-time in college students that earn 6 or more college-level credits in their first term. This is an indicator that is utilized by the Texas Success Center to monitor students' initial progress and momentum in their program pathway and is considered to be a leading indicator. During the 7-year time frame displayed, an average of 42% of Del Mar College FTIC students earned at least 6 credit hours in their first term, and this rate has remained fairly consistent. Del Mar College's average rate is quite a bit lower than the state average, which is 59% for this time period. This indicates to us that we have additional work to do to help our students onboard and complete college-level coursework in their first semester. As I mentioned, this is a new KPI, which requires us to establish a threshold and target. The threshold corresponds to the college's average rate, and the target is our aspirational goal. We will monitor this KPI as part of our strategic planning and student enrollment management processes. Any questions about this new KPI?
Why would you set your threshold at 42% if that's your average? Why, and you're less than the last 2 years?
We considered that to be our average baseline, and considering the complexities of impacts to our students on COVID-19, we decided to keep that estimate lower. This is brand new, implemented in the middle of our strategic plan. So you're right, we could have gone a little bit higher, but considering there are so many other aspects that we are focusing on in light of COVID-19, we aimed to keep it safe and keep the baseline a little bit lower.
And we don't have 2020 data, right?
Correct.
Right.
We don't have that yet.
Mr. Kelly has a questioning look on his face.
Yeah, so what are we attributing it to, being so far below the state average? Because, I mean, all the other colleges face the same challenges we do, right, or similar?
One thing I'd like to point out is that this looks at credit level attainment.
Right.
Something that we have discussed in prior workshops and that we will discuss in upcoming slides is that the majority of our FTIC students require developmental education. They come to us not college ready.
Okay.
So it's not simply a matter of advising our students into college level courses, it's ensuring that they are ready that first term so that they can earn college level courses when they start.
Okay, so that's factoring into our data here.
Correct.
Okay.
And there is a new TSI assessment instrument, which is going to change our data in upcoming years, but on average, our FTIC student population, 65% or so require remediation in one or more subject areas.
So do we look at those students that don't require remedial classes and see how well they're doing in earning 6 credit hours?
We can disaggregate that. I don't have that data available to me right now, but that's something that we can provide.
Okay.
One of the strategies that we talked about yesterday, actually, at the commission, that we've already begun here that will have an impact on the 6+ credits in the first term are the 8 weeks opportunities for students. When we're able to fully formalize that plan and implement that plan in an uninterrupted manner, we believe that to a degree, not 100% across the curriculum, but to a more significant proportion than we have now, the opportunities to break down a 16-week semester for many of our students into two courses at a time will dramatically change that. We heard testimony yesterday from my dear friend and colleague, who I believe is one of the best, is Dr. Greg Williams over at Odessa, who shifted to the 8-week format, and this came off the heels of a threat from the legislature to close their campus altogether. There was 5 campuses several legislative sessions ago where there was a shot across the bow for community colleges, and there was an idea of possibly outright closing 5 colleges, including Odessa, which didn't make any sense. But the rest of the story is his persistence rates and his completion rates have dramatically increased when you're able to give the students, and I'm not, whether it's developmental students or not, that still has to be parsed out. But if we're just talking about the students taking credit classes on the way to probably more transfer types of programs, that their numbers are increasing. Now we've had a fair amount of 8-week opportunities, but the formalization is in process. Our plan to establish the foundation of 8-week offerings for next fall is coming. I hope I didn't steal any thunder. But I wanted to address that because, again, the data is clear. Now, the data is very strong that indicates that when you give a student, just say a credit student who's on their way to getting a 2-year associate's degree to move on to one of the great universities, when you give them two classes at a time, 8 weeks at a time, and they're able to take 4 classes in a semester, 2 at a time, that right there is more than double what we're talking about up here. So that's the strategy. That is a strategy, though not a standalone strategy, that we're aiming to fortify, and we're hoping, we will be talking more about that in coming board meetings to show you what that could look like here at the college. We think it's an imperative. Mr. Bennett?
I'm a little confused in the numbers. Let me see if I can clear it up, or if you can clear it up. 65% have to have remedial education, is that correct? Okay,
Microphone.
so we've got 35% that don't,
Correct.
and we're getting 44% of the FTIC students earning 6+ credit hours. So all that 35% earn 6 hours, plus we're getting another 8 or 9% of the ones that have to have remedial education earning 6 credit hours?
I haven't looked at that particular breakdown, but the way you're describing it makes sense.
So that's going to be tough to increase that number. That's my impression. You may want to check my numbers.
Thank you. And that aligns well with the conversation around the next KPIs. You mentioned, Mr. Bennett, it will be hard to raise these numbers, but there are activities in place to help our students to become college ready, meet the state standards more quickly. This KPI, KPI 2, looks at unprepared students who satisfy TSI requirements in 2 years. This KPI, along with the next one, has been reviewed by the board during prior board workshops. We included them as part of the SEM plan because we believe that the students' attainment of college readiness standards impacts early momentum and persistence. This looks at first-time in college students who are identified as unprepared based on their TSI assessment scores and tracks them to determine the percentage that meet the state's TSI requirement within 2 years. So this is how we're seeking to impact as well that 6+ credit. How can we get them to be college ready more quickly? Students can meet the state's TSI requirement by completing the college's developmental education program requirements or by retaking and passing the TSI assessment. We have met our thresholds for reading and writing, but not for math. The comparison data for our large college peers is also included. Here's a visual representation of our 5-year trends in math. At the bottom of the chart, you will see both the year that the data was collected and the student cohort that is reflected in that year's data. For example, the 2020 data reflects the fall 2017 first-time in college student cohort and their progress within that 2-year time period. We experienced an increase in our rate from 2016 to 2017 and have maintained fairly consistent rates since then in math. Here's a visual representation of our 5-year trends in reading. We have experienced a steady increase during this time period. Here are our 5-year trends in writing. There have been inconsistencies in our rates during this time period. There have been several statewide changes that have impacted college readiness in writing, including the integrated reading and writing curriculum model and changes in the TSI assessment benchmarks in writing. These changes have had an impact on our students' attainment of TSI requirements of writing and can be attributed to the up and down factor in our data. Here you will see the details of this KPI for Del Mar College, our large college peers, and all Texas colleges. What is important to notice here is the rate of change over this time period, as highlighted in yellow in the right-hand column. This column describes a percentage point change over the last 5 years. As you can see, the change that our college has experienced for reading and writing is substantially larger than our large college peers and our statewide peer group. The change that we have experienced for math falls behind our large college and statewide peer group averages. I'll pause here for any questions about the last few slides.
That math thing looks like we're really struggling. Now, Doctor, I know we talked about and we met with a group that had an alternate approach to passing that, and they had a high success rate, and they were going to run a pilot program under Dr. Silva, but that never happened. Has there been any follow-up on that? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know. I've lost contact with them. It's been a 1.5 years since I've talked to them, or that they've even approached us. they've got an approach that's, I think, supplemental, and we brought them in at the point, you know, a couple years ago or so to be supplemental. But that's a whole very specific conversation that needs to be held with the math department at the instructional department level. But I mean, I hear what you're saying. There's an outside group that says they've got a different approach, but it's just been a while since I've talked to them. We did try to bring them in, again, to supplement what we were doing. It's just, I don't know that they're still operating. I just don't know.
I know they are.
Okay, well then I haven't heard from them, so if you want to steer them our way and that sort of thing, we'll reconnect them with how we have. But at the same time, this is an instructionally driven process that at the end of the day, notwithstanding any outside groups or anybody else, need to face the data, and we need to address what's being done and make course corrections and or otherwise adjustments. And that's why we're looking at the data, Regents. That's what we're trying to do. We need to be able to be ready to advance these courageous conversations, like they say in Austin all the time, and you know, face our own information and our own data. And yes, outside sources that can supplement. Like I said, I worked real hard on bringing them in to the degree that they could, because they frankly, if you know the way academics are in academia, they've got their purview and they've got their academic freedoms and so forth. That being said, you know, we're willing to listen, and I'm willing to follow up with them, absolutely.
It just looks like we need to do something that we haven't been doing to raise those numbers.
Understood. And some of those folks teach in our departments too, and so forth, and so we know who they are, but we certainly want to, again, we're reviewing the data. I know our chief academic officer is watching very closely, maybe some others are, but these are the opportunities to take on a challenge that is, frankly, a statewide challenge. No matter how disparate those numbers are, everybody across the board, universally across the country, deals with math as that barrier class and or coursework. So, but duly noted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next KPI, unprepared students completing a college-level course in 2 years. It is similar to the last KPI that we just took a look at, but instead focuses on the completion of a college-level course. This KPI looks at FTIC students who are identified as unprepared based on their TSI assessment scores and tracks them to determine whether they successfully complete a college-level course in the subject in which they entered not ready within 2 years. We have met our thresholds for reading and writing, but not for math. We have also met our target for 2024 for writing. Included in this table is the comparison data of our large college peers. Here is a visual representation of our 5-year trends in math. Our rates have remained fairly steady during this time period. Here is a visual representation of our 5-year trends in reading. We have had some variation in our rates, but have seen an increase overall. Here is a visual representation of our 5-year trends in writing. This line mirrors the same shape for writing as we saw in KPI 2. Here you will see the details for KPI 3 for Del Mar College, our large college peers, and all Texas colleges. Again, the rate of change during this time period is what is important to notice. It is highlighted in the right-hand column. We are moving in the right direction with our numbers and are meeting or exceeding our peers' averages for change for reading and writing. However, when it comes to math, we need to increase our numbers at a faster pace. I'll pause here for any questions. I will now turn it over to our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. John DeHalcom.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, Regents, and Dr. Escamilla. Working with underprepared students includes helping our students increase their academic-related skills, their motivation for learning, and their social engagement through instruction, advising, and support services. Helping our underprepared students entering college starts with onboarding and student support services. One way support services is helping is to assist the learner in implementing a student hub for registration activities, and we are in the process of planning a one-stop shop in the Heldenfelds building. And so a team has been working with architects to design this one-stop shop. That will help not just the underprepared learner, but all learners as well. The college is also developing processes to reduce barriers and the time of entry into college-level courses that impact progression for those students needing developmental education. The Student Enrollment Center and Testing launched recently, November 1st, a new initiative, a TSI advising initiative, in which an advisor is on site when the student takes the test, and they can meet with that advisor immediately to discuss placement preparation and retesting options. Since November 1st, 148 students have seen advisors. 12 students immediately saw an advisor in person, 50 via phone, and 94 via email. So I think that initiative is working so far, but we'll see the results as time goes on. Now, I know we've discussed mathematics, and yes, that is a concern, and that is one of our top goals in the new STEM division. We have an interim dean who I have discussed with him in a great deal about the mathematics, and so that is a big goal to get where we need to be with mathematics. The new department chair for mathematics also, and the department themselves, have been creating stronger co-requisite courses in mathematics so that it ties in more closely with a student's major area. Instead of doing the co-req with strictly algebra or statistics, they've included to pair it with business, social science, mathematics as well. So the students will have more interest and be more engaged. So we're hoping that will help. Now, co-requisites are mandated by the state of Texas. We have to do the co-requisite model. Those have been found to be successful through pilots at other institutions. So this is something that we have to do. Now, one other thing, and we gladly do it, by the way, and the new non-course-based option, the NCBOs, are very rewarding, and the math department is increasing the opportunities of students to take the NCBOs. In other words, a student, let's say they sign up for the co-requisite, they're not in co-requisite, that is, but let's say they're just short a little bit of passing a TSI, they're let into a college-level course, but let's say they're pretty good at statistics and learning it, but let's say they have a little trouble in regression analysis, and so the NCBO instructor can help them through those areas where they have the most difficulty. And we've had success with the NCBOs in the English, and we've done some in mathematics in the past, but we're ramping it up to a higher level. So we're hopeful to see big changes in math, but we also need to keep very positive attitudes among our students of mathematics. So many of them will say, I can't do math. I'm not good at math. Well, everybody can do math. Everyone can. They may be able to do statistics better than algebra, but we need to instill that positiveness in our students that they can do it. They can do it. And so that would be very important here. So we are trying to build up the mathematics. We do see that there are issues there. One other idea or strategy for early onboarding is professional development for training employees and faculty, but also mostly the employees, to provide customer service, training to improve student experiences, and also to increase the frequency, more frequency of the onboarding here at the college. So we want to provide also financial aid advisor information to students as well. Are there any questions at this point before I turn it back to Dr. Wilson? Nope. Okay, Dr. Wilson.
We are in the home stretch, I promise. The final pathway stage included in the SEM plan is progress, which corresponds to goal 3 of the SEM plan. The stage begins when a student enrolls in courses within their program of study, or you can call them their major courses, and ends when they complete 75% of their program requirements. Another term that we use to identify this stage is persistence. During this stage, students have selected their path, and it is our job at the college to support them and keep them on their paths. As part of this discussion, we will be looking at 3 KPIs. We will also review a sample of strategies from Goal 3 of the SEM plan, and the objective of Goal 3 is to improve retention and student success supports. KPI 1 looks at persistence rates. This indicator looks at the percentage of full-time FTICs enrolled in credit programs that continue to be enrolled at Del Mar College or another Texas public college within 1 and 2 years time frame. One thing I'd like to point out is that when an indicator looks at full-time FTICs, that's actually a very small population. On average, our full-time FTIC size is about 500 students, but in light of COVID, that number has decreased into about 300. So we look at this indicator because it's one that the state uses, but we have to also realize that this looks at only a small segment of our population. We did meet our thresholds. Oh no, we did not meet our thresholds for year 1 and 2 persistence rates. Excuse me. Here are our 5-year trends. Our 1-year persistence rates were increasing until 2020, when we experienced a more than 10 percentage point dip. Our 2-year persistence rates have fluctuated and have also experienced a dip in 2020. This is to be expected due to the impact of the pandemic on our students and their ability to continue with their educations during this time period. When we look at the details of our persistence rates for the past 5 years, it's important to focus on the rate of change. Again, we are only looking at full-time FTICs. Our large college peers and statewide peer group have also experienced persistence declines in 2020, though as you can see, the rate of decline at Del Mar College is a little higher than that of our peers. Now let's take a broader look at our persistence rates by looking at all students enrolled in our fall semesters, not just full-time FTIC students. This data comes from the coordinating board, and the most recent data published is from fall 2019. So at this point, I do not have this data point for you to review with the impact of COVID on display. This table shows the percentage of all students enrolled in credit programs during the fall semester that were found to be enrolled at Del Mar College or another institution in Texas the subsequent fall semester. As you can see, our fall-to-fall persistence rate is just above the state average. So this is another way to look at persistence, and we will definitely be on the lookout for more up-to-date data. Any questions about that KPI? Okay. KPI 2 is new and looks at first-time in college students that earn 15 or more college-level credits in their first year. It's similar to the one that we reviewed just a few minutes ago. Again, this is an indicator that is utilized by the Texas Success Center to monitor students' early progress and momentum in their program pathway, and is considered to be a leading indicator. During the 7-year timeframe displayed, an average of 30% of Del Mar College FTIC students earned 15 credit hours in their first year. This rate has remained fairly consistent. Del Mar College's average rate is quite a bit lower than the state's average, which is 45% during this time period. Again, this indicates to us that we have additional work to do to help our students persist and complete additional college-level coursework in their first year.
May I ask a question about the comparison numbers? I realize that we frequently compare ourselves to large districts, the large district cohort. Do those cohorts have a similar number of part-time students that we do? I know Lynn's the outlier, but I'm curious, we have such a high percentage of part-time students, which is why it's 15 credits in year one. But I'm curious as to, is there a comparison cohort that has as many part-time students as we do? Oh.
Thanks for the reminder. With the Blinn excluded, our part-time population tends to be just a little bit higher than the average.
Okay.
And you bring up a really good point. When we look at comparison groups, we may want to seek to compare ourselves to those with very similar rates of part-time students. It's a good suggestion.
Or maybe look at these numbers without Blinn. Is that
Right. And what you see here is not the large college cohort. These are all Texas colleges.
Right, right.
Yep. So I'm looking at our cohort list, and with the exception of Central Texas, I can call Dr. Yiannopoulos to clarify, but they've got very different models that assist. This isn't the only explanation, but this is an explanation. The commuter nature of our school is what we've been trying to change for the past several years, and to some degree. For some students, it's absolutely an imperative that their existence be as commuter as possible, and in some cases, that's what's working against them, economics and the like. But Amarillo College, South Plains, Navarro, North Central, Laredo, I think there's a couple of explanations, and I think it's always first and foremost that it has to do with the academic course offerings and how you set those up and schedule. Again, we keep coming back to that, and I think the other piece is what's really is an important one, is the residential aspects of the majority of the other colleges out there, and when you have residential opportunities for students. This isn't necessarily a commercial for that, but it is an explanation, and one of the explanations as to how we're different than the other colleges. We're more like an Austin Community College in many ways, although it's a very large institution, statistically speaking. We tend to track with these kinds of data very closely to them. And I think that has to do largely with their commuter nature. So those are two thoughts, Regent Kelly, that might support that, and we've seen that over the years. I've lived it at another college when I was at Tyler. When you have, outright 10% of your 10% of your enrollment lives on campus, and are able to take full loads and come as a traditional collegiate experience, or come for a traditional collegiate experience. Those students are loading up, and they're focused, and they're going to class early in the morning in their pajamas, literally, because they live there. So just a couple of thoughts for consideration.
I had another question, and I don't know, maybe it's the standard. Why do we stop tracking at 75%? Our guided pathways, excuse me.
We don't stop tracking at 75% as a whole. For this particular SEM plan, we decided to focus on the recruitment aspect and persistence up until that point. And that definition comes from the state's definition of the pathway stages.
So-
As a whole, though, Guided Pathways is embedded within our quality enhancement plan work. We look very closely at completion, how our students are doing in their final stages, as well as our student services staff works closely with those students to help them finish, those that are close and past 75%.
Okay, that was my concern.
Okay. As this is a new KPI, we need to establish a threshold and target. The threshold corresponds to the college's average rate, and as we discussed with the previous KPI, the most recent data that we have is for 2019, so we sought to be a little bit more conservative, not knowing what the impact on this data will be given COVID-19. The target is our aspirational goal. We will monitor this KPI as part of our strategic planning and student enrollment management processes. Now, this next metric, we did not select to be included as a new KPI, but we will monitor it and track it. This metric looks at first-time in college students that earn 30 or more college-level credits in their first year. This is an indicator, again, that is utilized by the Texas Success Center. And as you can see from the numbers, it's fairly uncommon for community college students to be able to accomplish this metric, as the majority of our students and community college students in general enroll in a part-time basis. However, it is helpful and informative to track. During the 7-year time frame displayed, an average of 5% of Del Mar College FTIC students met this criteria, and statewide, an average of 8% of community college students met this criteria. The last KPI that we will look at today is the percentage of our student population that is classified as sophomores. When we developed this strategic plan and took part in the retreats, we discussed the idea that we want to make more sophomores. In other words, we want to support our students in accumulating over 30 credit hours. A student is classified as a sophomore if they have earned over 30 credit hours, but not more than 72 hours. The data within this snapshot includes dual credit students, and the college did meet its threshold for fall 2020. To fully understand what we are doing and how we are doing with creating sophomores, we need to look at the big picture. The data that we looked at in the previous slide included dual credit students. It may be more appropriate to remove dual credit students from this calculation, as their course enrollment behaviors are different from that of our traditional student population. This table that you see on your screen now excludes the dual credit population. In addition to freshmen and sophomores, we also have the subgroups of unclassified and other. These are coordinating board definitions. Unclassified students are those that have earned 73 credit hours or above and have not yet earned an associate degree. Other students are those who have earned an associate degree or higher and continue to be enrolled at Del Mar College. The proportion of credit students identified as sophomores has increased during the past 2 years. However, this may be due to the decreased number of FTICs that have enrolled during this time period. But it's very interesting to monitor. Any questions about the number and/or percentage of sophomores that we have? Okay, I will now turn it over to Associate Vice President Cheryl Sanders to discuss strategies.
In the SEM Plan Goal 3, we will be addressing progress, persistence. Some of the strategies are listed on this slide. For example, increasing success and completion of male students of color. By participating in the Texas Education Consortium, we will engage in professional development to better understand and address the ongoing COVID-19 related barriers that have contributed to the enrollment declines for male students of color within South Texas. We are establishing a mentoring program with targeted outreach, support, and advising of currently enrolled male students of color. Men of color have the lowest college enrollment and completion rates of any subgroup. The student mentoring program will have a strong focus on mentoring, leadership development, community engagement, and collective impact, all of which serve to address the goal of enhancing the overall academic success and retention of male students of color. To identify at-risk students, in addition to GPA and financial aid, probation, and suspension, we will include things such as food and or housing insecurity, childcare issues, etc., in the student self-assessment. This assessment will be implemented proactively in the beginning of terms rather than after we find out a student is struggling. To increase the number of reverse transfer graduates, we're going to explore the use of the National Student Clearinghouse's National Automated Platform for exchanging reverse transfer student data. Institutions will be able to securely send course and grade information to us on students that have transferred, and if eligible, the students will then be awarded an associate's degree. Are there any questions on any of these strategies?
I have a general question on reverse transfer. Dr. Escamilla, does the coordinating board count a success for us if a transfer student graduates from a 4-year? Do we get any credit for that, or only if we actually award an associate's degree?
So the 11 success, you're talking about the success points?
Or any data point?
Yeah, it's through the success points, Patricia.
It's on the CBM 009, that's the graduation report that we do every fall. So we get it in terms of a success point graduation.
So 2 points there.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I will turn the presentation back over to Dr. Wilson for our conclusion.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, attention, and great questions this morning. The college has an operational strategic plan, which is a living document. Our SCM plan is also a living document. It allows us to be responsive to ever-changing conditions. We are currently on version 2 of the operational plan. Version 3 will be released early next year and will incorporate aspects of the strategic enrollment management priorities, as well as additional priorities that have come about due to our pivoting due to the pandemic. Here's a visual representation of our planning process. It's an ongoing circle of planning and improvement. The current strategic plan is in effect through August 2024. It is formally evaluated annually and is updated as needed. And believe it or not, we are already in the year 3 of implementation of this plan, so expect sometime next year to start hearing about the development of a brand new plan. There will be 2 additional workshops on strategic planning KPIs this year. We are anticipating a workshop in mid-spring on goals 3 and 4, and another workshop in the summer on goals 5 and 6. The data and the strategies shared today help us as a college and hopefully our Board of Regents to better understand and tell the Del Mar College story. Our strategic plan guides our actions as a college and contains our priorities for student success. However, we must be responsive to changing conditions and be nimble in our actions in order to better serve our students. And as you can see from the data you saw today and also the strategies that you heard, we have our work cut out for us. But we have an excellent team of dedicated professionals, and with your support behind us, I know that we'll be successful. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Ms. Hutchison, you have a wrap-up comment?
I do. I want to try to articulate just a general response to all of this, and starting with the data. It's just incredible that we're able to get this kind of information. I want to really highlight that. I love to look at the history of where we've been, and I love the projection and the vision for what we can do and how to assimilate this. And look, anyway, I'm just blown away by the amount of work and the way it's been presented. So let me start with that. And then say, however, I have just a a personal frustration, or I guess I want to make sure that we assimilate these numbers with looking at our students. And I guess that gets again to who are we comparing ourselves? Are we comparing ourselves against Blinn? Are we comparing ourselves with Del Mar 3 years ago? What are we doing there? And particularly, I'm thinking about some of the goals in terms of well, like the one about taking 6 or more hours. I'm thinking, what if the student comes to us, and we know this is true, not wanting to take more than 6 hours? They have a great life plan, and that life plan is to continue with their very good job that they have right now part-time and add these classes, and we are fitting their needs 100%. And yet, it sort of looks like the college and/or they have gotten dinged for that. That's not the goal. That's not what they should be doing. That's not what we should be doing. And I just want to make sure we are able to recognize in all this that it depends on what that student's goal is as to whether or not we've been successful or not.
Yes. If I may add,
Yeah.
in some of my comments, I guess it was only implied. Now's a good time to clarify, because we recognize those students. And Associate Superintendent Crenshaw over at Flower Bluff is my poster child for this. The 10 years that it took for him to finish the associate degree before he finished his bachelor's degree. As a meat cutter is how he raised his family and had that stability and that plan that was necessary for him to take care of his family along the way at his pace, at his choice. We recognize that not one size will fit all. In one of the specific conversations that I've had over the past few weeks with my colleagues from around the state around an effort to move students more efficiently through, using the 8 weeks as the centerpiece of that conversation, what my colleagues and I have been talking about over the past few weeks is that not one strategy fits all. Right. And we do recognize that. And our economies are very different and call for different things, and we appreciate that and recognize that. That being said, and I've talked to our academic leadership here, and I've said, look, we can't apply one approach to everyone. We can't be that college. We've got to be more sophisticated about understanding what those diverse needs are and be ready to operate. So I appreciate that very much, and we do recognize that our economy will call for different things for different people.
And if I had that magic wand, my vision would be if we could know as students come in what their goals are. And we could say, I've come in unprepared. My goal is to take those courses I need and take 3 more hours, or whatever that goal was. And then track, did we do what that student wanted to do? That's, anyway, in a perfect world.
One of the other conversations that Regents Chair Scott and I just had was, looking at their needs differently. Because of the diverse needs of our students, we've got to ask ourselves, are we ready, willing, and able to meet the needs based on, I'm just going to call it basic survival and stabilization kinds of things. In other words, look at housing not as a fun, frat opportunity or sorority opportunity or, a fun living experience, not necessarily. Right now, the housing needs, right now, they're survival issues. Food insecurity, housing insecurities, that's the way we need to look at the diverse needs of our students still. And those are the opportunities in front of us. Let's look at it from that standpoint first, and I think we can really dive into the various and myriad of experiences that our students need more than I would dare say than they want. But great point, Regent Hutchinson. Thank you so much. This feedback is important for us. Please, sorry, Chair Scott.
I was going to echo what Regent Hutchinson said about the quality of the information, and as we've gone through these iterations since adopting the strategic plan, I think these conversations, as we have them during these reports, is so important. And so I do appreciate, I know it takes a lot of preparation, but it helps us make better decisions to really understand the numbers. And you can tell by the level of discussion that there's a great interest in this. My probably closing comment was that most of this today was focused on our credit students. There are some general enrollment numbers, but most of this was focused only on our credit students, and which ignores half of our students. In any given year, we have another 12 to 14,000 continuing education and non-credit students that we touch. And so I just, back to your point about what is each student's goal in coming here, I know we look at those numbers in other places, but I want us to keep perspective that this represents only about half of our students. And in some cases, only 300 to 500 of our students. And so I think that's important to note. So thank you all very much for this. I think if there's ongoing questions, I know Dr. Escamilla is always available to take your questions and provide some context for it. Any other closing comments? Regents, we are going to go into closed session into the other room, so we'll grab lunch if it's available, or when it's available, we'll come back out. We do have about an hour that we're going to take in closed session right now, and then we'll have a recess. There is a student art display that we're going to have an opportunity to look at here in the building during a break at lunch, and so we're going to spend, again, about 45 minutes to an hour in closed session discussing some items, hopefully, and keep our day as efficient as possible. So allow me to read the closed session language, please. The board will now enter into closed session under Texas Government Code 551.071 regarding the pending or contemplated litigation or settlement offer with possible discussion and action in open session, and the seeking of legal advice from counsel on pending legal or contemplated matters or claims, including legal redistricting obligations and legal audit questions with possible discussion and action in open session. And under Texas Government Code 551.074 regarding the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, or discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, including the annual Board of Self-Evaluation, with possible discussion and action in open session. The time is 11:36 a.m. Regents, we have come back from closed session at 12:59 p.m. There is no action that was taken coming out of closed session, and we'll save our calendaring items for the regular board meeting. So at 1 p.m., we are adjourning the workshop session and calling to order our regular meeting of the Board of Regents of the Del Mar College District at 1 p.m. on Tuesday, December 14th.